Before we dive into this captivating tale of unexpected encounters and second chances, tell us in the comments below. Where are you watching this video from? Let's see how far this story of love and redemption reaches. The CEO, the wrong room, and a family he never knew. Gabriel Hayes, CEO of global investment group Hayes Capital, descended with the confidence of a man accustomed to having everything under control. Dressed in a bespoke dark suit and gleaming Italian shoes, his mere presence commanded respect. "Welcome, Mr. Hayes. Your private villa is ready, along with the meeting room you requested." Gabriel barely nodded, his gaze fixed on the luxurious landscape before him. He wasn't there for pleasure. He had a multi-million-dollar contract to sign and wasn't about to waste time enjoying himself. As he entered the resort's VIP area, he glanced at his assistant. "Review the itinerary. Tomorrow, there can be no mistakes with the negotiation." That same day, a tourist cruise docked at the resort's private pier. Among the passengers, a young woman stepped off with a tired smile and 2 children clutching her hands. This was Valerie Reed, and the little ones were her 7-year-old twin sons, Thomas and Matthew. She had worked tirelessly for years, saving every penny to take her sons on this vacation. For her, it wasn't just a few days of rest. It was a way to give them a piece of what they never had. Her eyes lingered on the happy families walking through the resort. Everything she had ever dreamed of, everything she lost when the man she loved disappeared without a word. The father of her children, Gabriel Hayes. Valerie took a deep breath. This trip was for her sons, not for stirring up the past. She had no idea that fate was about to bring them face to face again. The second night at the Emerald Coast Resort, the resort shimmered with warm lights reflecting on the calm water. The breeze gently stirred the palm leaves as soft restaurant music drifted through the air. Gabriel emerged from an intense conference room meeting, a frown etched on his face. The contract, which had seemed secure, had just gotten complicated. The investors were asking for a clause he wasn't willing to accept so quickly. Negotiations would continue in the morning, but for now, he just wanted to get to his villa, take a shower, and get some rest. He had been given the key earlier, but a glitch in the resort system caused staff to inadvertently swap it. He was given the key to another villa, Valerie's. Gabriel walked along the wooden walkway leading to the floating villas, loosening his tie. Still thinking about the deal's numbers and conditions, he didn't pay much attention to the entrance. Without turning on the light, he opened the door and stepped inside. Inside, the living room had a soft, inviting glow. A subtle fragrance, a mix of vanilla and coconut, wafted through the air. Everything seemed too warm for his usual taste, but he didn't stop to think much until he saw her. Valerie was there. She wore a simple cream-colored dress, and her long brown hair fell down her back. She was tenderly tucking in the twins, 2 blonde, green-eyed boys, who were dozing in the bed. Gabriel froze. Everything in the room faded into silence. He could only stare at the children. They looked like him when he was little. Too much. That gaze, that mischievous smile. Valerie looked at him too, paralyzed. Her heart hammered. 7 years had passed. 7 years since she had raised those children alone. And now, right in front of her, was the man who left her without explanation. The same man she tried to erase from her heart. Gabriel couldn't speak. For the first time, he was not in control of anything. Everything he knew about his life crumbled in a single second. "What are you doing here?" Valerie asked, her voice trembling. Gabriel swallowed hard, but didn't answer. Only one question crossed his mind. Are these children mine? His world crashed down. Valerie gritted her teeth, the pain of all those years accumulating in her gaze. "Get out," she said, without raising her voice, but firmly. Gabriel didn't move. "Out," she repeated more forcefully. He took a step back, unsure what to do, and reaching the door, he murmured, his voice broken, "Why didn't you tell me?" Valerie let out a bitter laugh. "And why? So you could disappear again? You were the one who left, Gabriel. You decided not to come back. So now, why do you care?" Gabriel had no answer. He just lowered his head and left. Night fell over the resort like a serene veil, while the lake waves gently lapped at the shores. The warm lights of the villas flickered in the distance, and silence stretched between them. But not everyone could sleep. In two villas, facing each other, Gabriel and Valerie were awake, each lost in their thoughts, trapped in memories and emotions they had tried to bury for years. Valerie sat on the edge of the bed, her gaze lost in the darkness. She remembered clearly the day she met Gabriel. It had been in London, during a business conference she attended as part of her professional training. He, already a successful entrepreneur, captivated her from the first moment. He was intelligent, self-assured, and had a smile that made her feel special. At first, everything was magical. Long dinners, walks through the historic city center, promises under the moon. Valerie had fallen completely for him, without much thought. She fell in love. She loved him like she never thought she could love anyone. One day, as they cooked together, Gabriel asked her with a smile on his lips, "Would you like to have children someday?" She laughed, amused. "Yes, of course, but only if it's with you." Gabriel hugged her from behind and whispered, "I had never thought of being a father, but with you, everything feels different." And in that moment, Valerie thought she had everything. Love, stability, but everything changed overnight. Gabriel received a proposal to lead an expansion in Asia, an opportunity he didn't want to pass up. He told her it would only be for a few months, that he would be back soon. But he never returned. Valerie waited for him. Weeks, then months. She wrote to him, called him. Nothing. The number was out of service. There was no way to contact him, and when she finally accepted that he was gone forever, she discovered she was pregnant. It was as if the world stopped. At first, she didn't know what to do. She felt fear, loneliness, uncertainty. But looking at the positive test, something inside her ignited. She wasn't alone. She had her children. Two little hearts growing inside her. She never heard from Gabriel again. She moved to a small apartment in a quiet suburb, started working from home, and dedicated every minute to preparing to be a mother. The pregnancy was tough. The nausea, the cravings, the sleepless nights. She faced it all alone, and on the day of delivery, with no one by her side, she brought Thomas and Matthew into the world. Two blonde, green-eyed babies who looked too much like him. Valerie looked at them every day, knowing they bore the face of the man who abandoned her. And still, she loved them with a strength she didn't know existed. They became her world. Meanwhile, in the next villa, Gabriel paced. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen, about what he had lost. He remembered perfectly the last time he saw Valerie. It was in her London apartment, the night before his flight. She cooked his favorite dish, and he hugged her tightly. He thought about telling her he loved her, but in the end, he didn't. He was afraid of what that feeling meant, afraid of staying, of not growing as he always dreamed. So he left. He convinced himself it was for the best. That time would fix things. But with each passing month, it became harder to return. His career advanced quickly. He signed contracts every week, and his name grew bigger and bigger. When he finally thought about going back, fear got the better of him. What if she didn't want him anymore? What if she had forgotten him? so he preferred not to know. Until now. The children were identical to him. There was no doubt. He had lost 7 years of their lives, their first steps, their first words, all for his ambition. He sat on the sofa, his head in his hands. He felt a mixture of guilt, sadness, and fear. How could he recover all that he had lost? Morning arrived, but neither of them had slept. Valerie prepared breakfast with a forced smile, while the twins played with their toys on the floor. She tried to appear normal, but inside she felt her world shaking. Gabriel, for his part, had an important meeting. He put on his suit and left the villa, but his mind remained trapped by what he had seen the night before. In the boardroom, the investors awaited him. Presentations, documents, figures, but nothing held his attention. One of his partners noticed. "Is everything all right, Gabriel?" He faked a smile. "Yes, just a tough night." But everyone knew something was wrong. The man who was always ruthless today seemed absent. Meanwhile, in the resort restaurant, Valerie had breakfast with the children. She didn't realize that some people were watching her. One of the employees had recognized Gabriel mistakenly entering her villa the night before, and the rumor quickly spread. Isn't that the woman they saw him with last night? Are those his children? Do they have his eyes? In places like this, where luxury attracts powerful people and public figures, gossip spreads like wildfire. And what started as a casual comment soon became a topic of conversation among businessmen, tourists, and employees. Within hours, a photograph began circulating on social media. Gabriel, leaving Valerie's villa, with a serious expression. Although the image was a little blurry, it was clear, and speculations quickly erupted. Does Gabriel Hayes have a secret family? The woman's twins are identical to him. The mother, an unknown Swiss woman. Valerie didn't even have social media, but her phone began filling with messages. A former colleague wrote, "Valerie, did you make the news? Is what they're saying true?" And another message, this time from a close friend. "Friend, the media are looking for you. What's happening?" Valerie swallowed hard. She didn't understand anything until she saw the photo. Her heart raced. It wasn't just her privacy at risk anymore. Now her children were at the center of a media scandal. She had to do something, and fast. She went to her room and started packing. She shoved the children's clothes into bags as best she could, while Thomas watched her from the doorway. "Mommy, are we leaving already?" "Yes, honey, we're going home. But what about the dolphins? You said we were going to see them today." Valerie pressed her lips together. She couldn't explain what was happening. She didn't want to scare them. "Another day, I promise." Thomas drooped sadly, lowering his head. Valerie felt her heart break into 1,000 pieces. She left the villa with her children, heading for the lobby. But halfway there, Matthew began to sway. He stopped dead, putting a hand to his forehead. "Mommy, I feel dizzy." Valerie immediately knelt down, touched him, and felt he was burning with fever. "Matthew, love, are you okay?" The boy barely managed to look at her before collapsing onto the sand. "Matthew!" Valerie cried, scooping him into her arms. "Please, wake up!" At that instant, a figure appeared, running. It was Gabriel. "What's wrong?" Gabriel asked, his voice trembling, rushing over as Valerie held the child. "I don't know. He just fainted," she replied, distressed. "He's burning up." Gabriel didn't hesitate for a second. He knelt down, took Matthew into his arms, and pressed him to his chest. "We need to get him to the medical center, now!" Valerie couldn't speak. Panic closed her throat. Gabriel ran through the resort corridors, regardless of who saw him, with the little one in his arms and Valerie right behind. The resort's private clinic wasn't far, but the journey felt eternal. Gabriel kept looking at Matthew's pale face, his agitated breathing, his eyelids barely fluttering. With every step he took, his heart beat harder, with more fear. Upon arrival, the doctors acted immediately. They took the child, hooked him up to monitors, took his temperature, took samples. Valerie stood beside the bed, squeezing her son's hand, silently praying. Gabriel stood by the door, unable to move. His fists were clenched, and his jaw was tight. Everything he had built over the years, all his achievements, his millions, his glass offices, nothing made sense in the face of that moment. He just wanted the child to be all right. A doctor came out of the room, wiping his hands. The child has a high fever. It was probably heat stroke, aggravated by stress. He's already receiving IV fluids and medication. We'll keep him under observation. Valerie let out a sigh of relief, covering her face with her hands. Gabriel closed his eyes, letting out a tear he couldn't control. It was as if air returned to his lungs. Hours passed. Valerie stayed by Matthew's bedside, not letting go of his hand. Gabriel didn't move from the corner. He didn't answer calls, didn't check emails. He didn't go to his meeting. He just stayed there, watching, waiting, regretting. Sometimes he looked at her when she wasn't aware. He saw her disheveled hair, her dark circles, her expression of a tired but strong mother. And then he understood how much he had failed. Valerie, for her part, also glanced about at him. She saw him sitting, elbows on his knees, head down. Every so often he ran a hand over his face, nervous. He didn't look like the man she met years ago. He wasn't the confident, arrogant, always impeccable executive. He was just a man, one who was scared. And for a moment she felt pity for him. Matthew began to improve. His breathing became calmer. His face regained some color. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was his mother. "Mommy." Valerie leaned over him and hugged him tenderly. "I'm here, my love. It's over now." Matthew slowly turned his head and saw Gabriel sitting beside him. "And who's that?" he asked in a low voice. Valerie froze. She hadn't expected that question. Gabriel also remained motionless. "He's a friend," she finally said, unsure how to explain something so complicated. Gabriel swallowed hard. It hurt to hear that, but he couldn't blame her. He had arrived late. Very late. Another 2 days passed in the clinic, and Matthew recovered well. The doctors discharged him, and they returned to the villa. But the resort was no longer the same. The rumors, the glances, the photographers hidden in the bushes, everything had gotten out of control. Gabriel received calls from his legal team, his partners, the board of directors. "We need you to clarify the situation, Gabrielle. There are too many rumors. The press is asking for a statement. You can't ignore it anymore. It will affect investments. The company's reputation is at stake." Gabriel ran a hand over his face. He had to do something. He couldn't let Valerie or his sons bear the scandal. So he made a decision. He called a press conference. That afternoon, the resort's main hall was set up for a conference. Cameras, microphones, reporters from international media. Everyone wanted to know if the rumors were true, if the powerful Gabriel Hayes had a secret family. Valerie didn't want to attend. She stayed in the villa with the children, though curiosity devoured her inside. She turned on the television and watched the live broadcast. Gabriel took the stage, dressed in a simple suit. No luxuries, no poses, just him, with a serious but determined face. "Thank you all for coming. I know there are many questions. I'm going to be clear." He paused. He took a breath. "Yes, I met Valerie Reed more than 7 years ago. We had a relationship that, for personal reasons, ended abruptly. I walked away. I made mistakes." Another silence. This time, his eyes looked directly into the camera. "Today, I have discovered that those two children could be my sons. I don't have proof yet. There's no DNA test. But seeing them, being with them, I have no doubt." Murmurs filled the room. And I want to make something clear. It doesn't matter if the DNA confirms it or not, because from the moment I saw them, I knew I would do anything to protect them, to be in their lives. Journalists raised their hands, asked questions, but Gabriel only said, "There is no scandal here. There is only a man who let something valuable go and is trying to make amends. The rest doesn't matter to me." And with that, he left the stage. The flashes continued, questions flew, but he had already said what was necessary. In the villa, Valerie sat in silence. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't know what to think. She didn't know if she could believe him. But that version of Gabriel was not the one she remembered. That night, he knocked on the door again. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice low. Valerie hesitated. Then she opened it. The children were already asleep. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said. "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for them." She looked at him, her arms crossed. "And now what? Are you going to leave again?" "No, not this time. I'm not leaving. I'm not losing them again." Valerie watched him in silence. There was so much pain between them. So many years unspoken. So many words unsaid. But there was something different in his gaze. Something sincere. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Gabriel," she told him. "I'm not asking you to trust me. Just to let me try." And for the first time in a long time, Valerie didn't close the door. Let's play a little game for those who read the comments. Type the word hamburger in the comments section below. Only those who made it this far stand. Now, let's continue with the story. The following days at the resort were different. Gabriel was no longer just the executive locked in meetings. Now he was seen walking with the children on the beach, helping them collect shells, running after them in impromptu games. He no longer wore formal suits, but comfortable, simple clothes. He was a changed man. Valerie observed everything with a mixture of awe and distrust. She saw him strive to connect with the twins without imposing himself. Gabriel asked for permission, asked if he could accompany them, spoke to them with affection and respect. He never tried to occupy a place he hadn't earned. But with every gesture, every look, every word, it was clear that he cared. One afternoon, Thomas and Matthew wanted to go to the pool. Valerie was tired and hesitated. Gabriel, from the terrace, noticed. "If you like, I can take them," he said in a calm voice. She looked at him in silence. She hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. "All right, but be careful. Matthew is still afraid of the water." "I know," he replied, smiling. And so, minutes later, the three were in the resort pool. Gabriel got in first, and the children followed him. They played, laughed, splashed, as if they had always been a family. Valerie watched them from afar, sitting on a lounge chair with a towel on her lap. Inside, her heart trembled. Not out of fear of Gabriel, but because of what she was starting to feel again. As night fell, Gabriel returned with the children, tired, but happy. Matthew had fallen asleep in his arms. Valerie opened the door, and seeing him like that, so protective, she couldn't help but feel her eyes water. "Thank you," she whispered, without looking directly at him. "You don't have to thank me. I just want to be here." That night, while the children slept, Gabriel knocked on the balcony door. Valerie stepped out, wrapped in a blanket, with a cup of tea in her hands. "May I sit?" She nodded. "Do you remember when we went to that cafe in London? The one with the red chairs?" Valerie barely smiled. "Yes. You said you wanted to write a book you never wrote. I still have it in mind." "What was it going to be about?" she asked, looking at him curiously. Gabriel hesitated a second. About everything I didn't know how to say, about the things we leave unfinished. Valerie looked down. The silence between them was long, but not uncomfortable. For the first time in years, they shared a moment without reproach. Days passed, and the resort hosted its famous summer gala, a celebration where guests attended in formal attire to dine under the stars. It was an exclusive event, with a live orchestra, string lights hanging over the beach, and tables with white tablecloths spread across the sand. Thomas and Matthew were excited. They had seen posters and heard other children talk about the event. "Can we go, Mommy?" Thomas begged with pleading eyes. "Are we going to have fancy clothes like everyone else?" Matthew asked. Valerie hesitated. She didn't plan to attend, but her children were excited. Gabriel, who overheard from the doorway, intervened. "If you want, I can take care of that." She looked at him with skepticism. "Nothing expensive," she clarified. "Just something simple." He smiled. "I promise." That night, Gabriel appeared with 2 perfectly folded small tuxedos and a simple but beautiful dark blue dress for Valerie. She received it with a mix of surprise and gratitude. It wasn't ostentatious or expensive, just right. As evening fell, they all got dressed. The twins were delighted with their outfits, posing in front of the mirror. Valerie came out of the bathroom in her dress, and Gabriel, who was waiting on the terrace, was speechless. "You look incredible," he murmured. She looked down, blushing. "Thank you." They went down to the gala together. The atmosphere was magical. Soft music, golden lights, the murmur of the lake in the background. People looked at them, but no longer with morbid curiosity, but with admiration. They looked like a real family. At one point, the orchestra played a waltz. Gabriel approached, extending his hand. "Dance?" Valerie hesitated. Thomas and Matthew watched them with wide eyes. Finally, she accepted. They danced slowly under the lights. Neither said anything, but their bodies moved in perfect synchronicity, as if time hadn't passed. Gabriel looked at her tenderly. "I'm not seeking redemption. I just want to be part of this," he whispered. Valerie swallowed, feeling her shield cracking. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking you to. Just let me try." They continued dancing until the music ended. At the end of the night, the children hugged them happily. "It was the best night!" Matthew shouted. "Can we come again?" Valerie smiled, hugging them. "Of course you can." That night, while the children slept soundly, Gabriel tucked them in carefully. Then he sat on the terrace, alone, gazing at the starry sky. Valerie came out and sat beside him. "Today, everything seemed to be okay," she said. Gabriel felt her. "Yes, it was a good day. And tomorrow what? Whatever you decide. If you ask me to leave, I will. But if you let me stay close, I won't go." She looked at him in silence. Her heart was torn. There was so much pain, but also so much hope. "I don't know what's going to happen," she murmured. "Neither do I," he replied, "but I'll stay to find out." And that night, for the first time, Valerie didn't feel afraid of what might come. The days at the Emerald Coast Resort became a pleasant routine. Every morning, the twins woke up excited about what they were going to do. It was no longer just a luxury resort for them. It was the place where they felt their family beginning to heal. Gabriel became part of their days. He took them to breakfast, taught them to swim, played building sandcastles with them, and even helped them with small math assignments. Valerie watched them, less and less afraid, and more amazed. What surprised her most wasn't that Gabriel was there, but that he did it so naturally. He seemed to have been born to be a father, even if he had discovered it late. One night, the children insisted on reading their favorite story before bed. Valerie took the book and sat on the bed, but Matthew interrupted. "Can Gabriel read it?" Gabriel blinked, surprised. Valerie looked up and met his gaze. He waited for her approval. She nodded slowly. "All right." Gabriel sat between the twins awkwardly, taking the book in his hands. At first, he read in a low voice and without much intonation, but when he noticed the children looking at him enthusiastically, he changed his strategy. He began to make funny voices for each character. The children laughed so hard they could barely stay lying down. When the story ended, Thomas looked at him with hopeful eyes. "Are you going to be here tomorrow too?" Gabriel looked at Hichun, then turned to Valerie. She avoided his gaze but said nothing. "Of course," he finally replied, with a smile. "And always?" Gabriel swallowed hard. The question tugged at his heart. "I'll do my very best, little one." That night, Valerie went out to the balcony with a hot cup of tea. Gabriel approached silently. "Did I earn it today?" She looked at him, confused. "What? A little more trust?" Valerie barely smiled. "Let's just say, I'm no longer planning to kick you out tomorrow." They both chuckled softly, and for a few minutes, they only listened to the wind rustling the palm leaves. No more words were needed. But not everything was so simple. The media continued to pay attention. Every time Gabriel went for a walk with the children, someone took photos. When they went to the restaurant, some people watched and whispered. Social media continued to be full of theories. Some said Valerie was an opportunist. Others said Gabriel was just trying to clean up his image. Valerie tried to ignore it, but it was difficult. One afternoon, as they walked along the beach, an older woman approached her with a phone in her hand. "Are you Mr. Hayes' children's mother?" Valerie stopped, uncomfortable. "Yes, why?" "Nothing, it's just, you were all over the news. What a heartwarming story. I hope he doesn't abandon them again." The words, though not ill-intentioned, hit her hard. Gabriel also heard them and tensed. That night, Valerie was quiet during dinner, and afterward, when the children were asleep, she confronted him. "What's going to happen when this ends?" "What do you mean?" "When the media attention dies down. When you go back to your life, your companies, your meetings, your flights. Are you going to leave us again?" Gabriel looked at her seriously. "I'm not leaving, but if you're referring to my work, I can't just disappear." "I'm not asking you to disappear," she replied, her voice firm. "But I also don't want you to play at being a father for just a few days again." He nodded slowly. "You're right, and that's why I resigned." Valerie frowned, surprised. "What do you mean you resigned?" "I submitted my resignation letter to the board. I'm no longer the CEO of Hayes Capital." She looked at him as if she couldn't believe it. "Are you crazy?" "Maybe. But I got tired of living just for an office. I know what I want now. You, the children. The rest, I can rebuild. But if I lose them again, I wouldn't be able to fix that." Valerie put her hand to her mouth. Tears trembled in her eyes. "I can't believe you did that. I did it for me, and for you. I never imagined that 3 such small people could teach me so much." Valerie looked at him for a long time. Then she approached and hugged him, for the first time since she had seen him again. It was a shy, short hug, but charged with contained emotions. The next day, Gabriel had no commitments. He got up early, prepared breakfast with the children, even though he burned the toast, and then took them to the pier to fish. Valerie accompanied them. They spent the whole day laughing, splashing, and playing. Upon returning to the villa, Thomas appeared with a drawing in his hand. "Look, Mommy." Valerie took it. It was a drawing of 4 people holding hands: her, Gabriel, Thomas, and Matthew. Above it, he had written in crooked letters, "Our family." Valerie felt a lump in her throat. "Do you like it?" Thomas asked. She nodded, stroking his hair. "Very much, my love." That night, the children fell asleep quickly, and Gabrielle, as was now customary, stayed on the terrace. Valerie came out with 2 cups of tea. "I'm not used to this," she said. "To what?" "To not being alone." Gabriel looked at her tenderly. "You'll never be alone again, if you don't want to be." Valerie sighed. "There's something you don't know. Since you left, they kept asking about you. Every time they got sick, every time they got into mischief, they asked if their daddy would come back." Gabriel closed his eyes, feeling his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry, I know, but don't say it anymore. If you're really going to stay, prove it with actions." "I will," he said without hesitation. Every single day. Time passed, and finally, the vacation came to an end. The resort was no longer just a place of rest, but the scene of an unexpected reunion and a new opportunity. Gabriel, Valerie, and the children boarded a return flight. She lived in a small town outside Geneva, quiet and surrounded by mountains. Gabriel decided to accompany them, though he didn't know what would happen next. When they arrived, he didn't go back to his old life. He settled in a modest hotel near the neighborhood and began visiting the children every day. He took them to school, picked them up, helped them with homework. Little by little, he earned a space in their routines. Valerie didn't stop him. She watched him, analyzing every gesture, every reaction. She wanted to make sure it wasn't a passing act. But it wasn't. Gabriel learned to cook, though he still failed with eggs. He became familiar with children's songs and school schedules. He even accompanied Valerie to the market one Saturday morning and helped her carry the bags as if he had done it all his life. One weekend, Thomas had a fever. Valerie was scared, as always, but this time, she wasn't alone. Gabriel arrived with medicine, fresh water, and held them in his arms for hours until he fell asleep. "Thank you for being here," Valerie whispered. Gabriel looked at her with bright eyes. "I'll always be here." And this time, she believed him. Let's do another little joke for those who only check the comments section. Type the word chocolate in the comments. Those who made it this far will get the joke. Now, let's continue with the story. One cloudy afternoon, Valerie was sitting on her porch, a blanket on her lap, and a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. She gazed at the lake, pensive. Gabriel approached with a quiet step and sat beside her. He said nothing at first, just watched her. "Are you okay?" she asked at last. Valerie sighed, though her expression said otherwise. She was just thinking about everything that had happened over the years. It's incredible how life comes full circle. Gabriel rested his elbows on his knees, looking straight ahead. "I think about it every day, too. It's hard for me to understand how I drifted so far from what really mattered." Valerie glanced at him. "Sometimes I feel like if you had arrived a month earlier, a year earlier, everything would be different." "Maybe," he said, "but maybe not. Perhaps we needed this path, so long, so complicated, to value what we have now." She remained silent. Then she passed him the coffee cup. "Here, it's hot." Gabriel smiled and took a sip. It was cold, but his heart didn't feel it. That was the new routine of their lives. Simple. Real. Little by little, Gabriel stopped being the visiting dad and became simply Dad. Thomas and Matthew no longer asked if he was going to sleep over. They knew he would be there. One morning, while preparing breakfast, Thomas drew a small house on a piece of paper. Inside were him, his brother, Valerie, and Gabriel. Above it, he wrote in his childlike handwriting, "The house with Dad." Gabriel saw it and couldn't contain his emotion. He knelt, hugged the boy, and said, "Thank you, champ. You don't know what that means to me." Valerie witnessed the scene from the kitchen. Her eyes welled up. But she smiled. She was starting to believe it. She was starting to trust. Days later, as they walked through town after dropping the children off at school, Gabriel stopped in front of a small, cozy coffee shop. He motioned for Valerie to come in. "What are we doing here?" "I just want to talk to you." They sat at a table by the window. Gabriel took an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Valerie looked at it, confused. "What's this?" "Open it." She did so slowly. Inside was a formal letter with a real estate agency's letterhead. It was an application to rent a house just 2 streets away from hers. Valerie looked up. "Are you moving here?" Gabriel nodded. "I don't want to be 5 minutes away by car. I want to be close, share your everyday life, be available always. I'm not going to intrude on your space, but I want them to know they can count on me, that I'm not leaving." Valerie remained silent, moved. No one had ever done anything like this for her. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just let me show you." That same weekend, Gabriel moved in. The house was modest, with a front yard and a white picket fence. The children helped unpack, happy to have him so close. "Now we can go see you every day," Matthew shouted. "And you can come for dinner whenever you want," Thomas added. Valerie just watched them, in silence, but with a smile she couldn't hide. One day, while the children were napping and Gabriel was mowing the lawn of his new house, Valerie approached with 2 lemonades. "You're sweatier than when you go to the gym." "I'm not used to this, but I like it." She sat on the edge of the porch. "Do you miss your old life?" Gabriel thought for a second. "I miss some people, and certain comforts, I admit. But no, I wouldn't trade this for anything. I feel more complete here, mowing the lawn, than in any skyscraper." Valerie watched him in silence. Then she looked away towards the garden. "And what's next?" "Whatever you decide," she sighed. "It's hard for me to believe all this is real. Sometimes I'm afraid to wake up and realize it's just a dream." "It's not. I'm here, Valerie, and I'm not leaving." Weeks passed. The routine was no longer improvised. Gabriel took the children to school in the mornings, worked part-time from home on personal projects, and in the afternoons dedicated himself entirely to his children. Valerie gradually resumed her career, knowing she no longer had to do it alone. One night, after putting the children to bed, Gabriel invited her for a walk along the lakeshore. The sky was clear, and the stars reflected in the calm water. "Do you remember when I told you I wanted to write a book?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Yes, I think I have the title now." "Oh, what is it?" "How to Learn to Be a Father in 7 Years of Absence." Valerie laughed, amused. "Sounds pretty honest." "I want to write it. Not for fame or for money. Just so my children can read it someday and understand how much I messed up, but also how much I love them." Valerie looked at him in silence. Then she approached and hugged him. It was no longer a test. It was not an experiment. It was real. Gabriel held her tightly, as if he never wanted to let go. Days later, while they cooked together, as they used to, Thomas walked into the kitchen with a school paper. "Mommy, Daddy, today they asked me to write about my hero." Valerie knelt to his level. "And who did you write it was?" Thomas smiled. "You too." Gabriel was silent, his eyes gleaming. "Valerie too. Why us?" "Because even though you sometimes argue, you're always with me. You take care of me. You make me laugh. You teach me, because now we're a family." Valerie hugged him tightly, on the verge of tears. Gabriel gently stroked his head. "Thank you, son." That night, Gabriel sat at his desk. He turned on his laptop and began to write the first lines of his book. The words flowed easily. "I never thought I could love 2 people I never asked to have so much, but who today are the most valuable things in my life. And to the woman who gave me the opportunity to return, there are not enough words to thank her." and as the keys clacked in the quiet night, he knew that this time there was no going back. Summer in Switzerland began to fade, leaving cooler afternoons and somewhat grayer skies. Despite the weather, Valerie and the children's home was filled with a different kind of warmth, one that didn't come from the sun, but from something much deeper, a family that, against all odds, was rebuilding itself from the ground up. One afternoon, while Matthew painted in the living room and Thomas read quietly, Gabriel entered with a medium-sized box in his hands. Valerie looked at him curiously from the kitchen. "What's that?" "A project I started years ago," he replied, "and that I finally finished." The box contained bound copies of his book. The title was simple: Return. Valerie took one of the copies and began to leaf through it. She quickly recognized passages from their story, tough moments, memories she had tried to bury. "Did you really write all this?" "Every word, and I didn't publish it. I just had a few copies printed for us. For the children. For you. So that, when they're old enough, they understand everything that happened, without lies." Valerie closed the book and held it against her chest. She said nothing. There was no need to. Shortly after, Gabriel organized a small dinner at his house. He invited some neighbors, some close friends he had met in town, and of course Valerie and the children. Everything was very informal, with homemade food, laughter, and anecdotes that made them forget that there had once been pain between them. "You cooked this, right?" Valerie asked with a mischievous smile as she tasted the rice. "Yes," he replied proudly, "and I did it without burning it. A miracle." Both laughed. The children ran through the garden, playing hide-and-seek with other neighborhood kids. It was a scene that seemed straight out of another world, one where they had never been lost. When night fell and the guests left, Gabriel remained sitting on the porch, watching the dim garden lights. Valerie sat beside him, as on many previous nights. "I never thought we'd end up here," she confessed. "Me neither," he replied, "but I wouldn't change a thing. If everything I lived led me to this moment, I would live it again." Valerie rested her head on his shoulder. They remained like that in silence for a long time. Weeks later, the twins put on a school presentation. It was something simple, with music, drawings, and children's words about their families. Valerie was nervous, Gabriel more than ever. When Thomas went on stage and took the microphone, everyone fell silent. "My family isn't like others," he began. "For a long time it was just Mommy, Matthew, and me. But now, Daddy is also here. And even though he took a long time to get here, he came to stay. And I love him very much." Valerie covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Gabriel felt his heart swell. Matthew also spoke, saying something simpler, but just as profound. "Before, I thought Daddy's left. Now I know some come back, and that's okay." The applause was spontaneous, warm, full of emotion. That day, Gabriel needed no more validation. His sons had accepted him, and that was all he needed. One Sunday, as they walked by the lake, Gabriel stopped. He took Valerie's hand firmly. "I want to ask you something." She looked at him, intrigued. "What?" "A second chance at everything. To do things right. To form this family with you. And yes, also this." He knelt. From his jacket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a simple, elegant ring with a small diamond. "I don't want to promise you perfection, or that I won't make mistakes, but I can promise you that I will never turn my back on you again. That you can count on me every day, that these children will have a father, and that you will have someone who values you as you deserve." Valerie remained motionless, the air filled with emotions, memories, fears, and hope. "You're an idiot," she finally said, her eyes filled with tears. "But yes, I want to try." Gabriel stood up and hugged her. At that instant, the children ran to them, and joined the embrace. It was as if the whole world had aligned just for that moment. The wedding was small. Only close family, some neighbors, and the friends they had made in the village. It was held on the lake beach, right where Gabriel proposed. Valerie wore a simple white dress, and the children wore suits, each with a small cushion in their hands. They carried the rings. During the ceremony, Gabriel took her hands and said, "Thank you for not closing the door, for giving me a second chance, for letting me come back." Valerie replied, "Thank you for truly coming back, and for not giving up." After the "I do," the children clapped loudly. The guests smiled, and in that instant, nothing else mattered. Months passed. The family adapted to their new life with a mix of joy and patience. There were easy days and not so easy days, but they always ended up together, dining at the same table, sharing stories, building memories. Gabriel continued writing. He finally published his book, though with changed names. It was an unexpected success, but this time, he wasn't carried away by fame or the spotlight. He continued living in the same town, with the same routine, with the same values he had learned the hard way. One afternoon, while playing in the park, Matthew approached Valerie. "Mommy, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, love. Anything you want. Is Daddy always going to be with us?" Valerie looked into his eyes, stroking his hair. "Yes, honey. This time, forever." Gabriel approached, hugged them both, and together they continued walking along the path. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in golden and pink hues. Everything was perfect, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in the midst of that silent stroll, Valerie thought about everything they had lived through. The pain, the absences, the fears, but also the hope, the forgiveness, the love that resisted the passage of time. Because in the end, that was the most important thing. A family that reunited when they least expected it. A woman who was a mother, guide, and strength for years. A man who put aside his pride to become a father. And two children who unknowingly united two worlds with their innocence. Love doesn't always arrive as one expects. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's lost. But if it's true, it always finds its way back. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what score you'd give the story from 0 to 10. See you in the next video.